Welcome back to episode 3, step 4, our final step for creating your composable commerce architecture, where my colleague and commerce expert, Jamie Smith, will walk us through finally architecting the bits and pieces of your solution together. Let's tune in.
When we look at step 4 and we look at actually defining that composable commerce architecture, we really want to start at what is the smallest component to build quickly to get impact, maximum impact. So when people talk about an MVP or a minimum viable product, people always think super small, super quick, get it done. Actually, no, an MVP has to be what the business sees as the largest impactful launch to them. Now that could be a good example, we can talk about Deckers. Deckers saw this as a 2-week implementation, getting a mobile device out to a marathon. So they could actually sell trainers in the live at a marathon so they could do what they needed to do. And that was the MVP, and it gave a huge return on investment. It could be that I'm looking at a brand new e-commerce store where I'm building from ground up. That could take me 12 weeks or more to do, depending on how many moving parts there are.
Sure.
But we have to then so the key thing is locking down the MVP, knowing how that impacts the brand and looking at it in the right way, and then really asking the key technical questions and really getting into refining the core feature functions. So what is actually needed for that launch? How do those feature functions map? What technology pieces, components touch to it? So for example, if I have a progressive web app at the front and I want to then have my cart added, how and where do I put the cart? Do I put it in a standard point in the flow? Is it a single page app and therefore all I'm going to do is click and buy?
Sure.
Is it a more traditional flow where I want to browse my products first? So we now start to map in all those feature functions. We define what the MVP looks like. We look at that in a phased approach. We look at how each of those critical components come together and then start to design the detailed high-level design of what the final solution will look like, taking each technical component into play.
Makes sense. So at this point, we're really starting to dig into the technology, assessing if we have the solutions already, or the customer has the solutions, they've already invested in them, or if they need to, purchase other solutions, purchase other technology. And talk me through a little bit about that. So when you're thinking of building something new and you do decide that you need to invest in additional solution, whether it's, a new CMS or PIM or whatever it might be, is that evaluation process part of this? You work with your commerce solution to do that? How does that process go? And does it depend? I assume, it depends per customer or brand, what industry they're in, what their goals are, what type of solution they look for. How do you generally advise people on that?
So it really, and this is why I've taken you through the steps, because it really goes back to that blueprint. Because when you look at the blueprint being non-technical immediately highlights the key collision points into what the trading engine needs. If we get over simple, people say about e-commerce, what is e-commerce? Well, e-commerce at the heart is an order taker. That's its fundamental purpose. That's what it was designed for way back in the 90s. But the reality is you can see quite quickly where you need certain components. So a good example, I would say 9 times out of 10, if I was going to model an architecture for you now, every client who wants to trade online, they need a content management engine if they're starting headless.
Sure.
They need a payment gateway. They must have some way of managing orders and fulfilling them. Sure. Now, okay, we can handle the base orders and capture the base orders, but then the fulfillment and the shipping and the taxation and all these elements are critical in a transaction. Again, those moving parts are a bit like Lego bricks. It's really saying which of those Lego bricks are critical to my journey. The example I gave you earlier on inventory. If inventory is the most important thing and price isn't, you may not be selling it. It could just be automated replenishment of inventory in a traditional B2B flow, where what you're doing is using composable commerce to, one, connect to your front end in whatever technology you want, whether you've written that in-house from ground up or you're using a web content management engine, and visualizing the data and the imagery around that, and then take the inventory, and the inventory is then pushed out and you make sure you can have it supplied on demand. So really it's looking at those combination of Lego bricks. Again, that also helps you map where your skills sit. Because in many cases, some of the very strong clients we work with today have all the IT skills in-house. Now, one of the greatest examples I always talk about is Charlotte Tilbury. Charlotte works with us and have been working with us for many years. They own their e-com destiny. They have built everything pretty much themselves in the e-com realm. They've designed and defined their own integrations and how they map. When is it most important to look at their blueprint? Whenever they look at changing these technologies back to composable, plug and play, pull one out, pull another in. It's never quite as simple as plug and play, but that's the aim, is to make it as decomposable as possible, is a way of putting it.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay, well, it feels like we've gone through our 4 steps. Any last words for our viewers on how to get started?
I would say the key thing to think about is always think from a design perspective. The key piece always in composable commerce is to have an unshakable will to try something new. To really dive in and look at the art of the possible, not be confined to the rigidity of what e-com is about. The more clients I work with over the years, and the more the industry changes and evolves, the more we look at new devices and new technological advancements, the more it makes us question what's the right way to do things. Don't always assume that commerce is about sell. Yes, at the end, that can be one of the key factors, but really take a deep breath and a step back and look at, where should my composable journey begin? Inventory, sale, order, product. And they're just 4 that I can start with.
Yeah, really getting back to break out of the chains and build for your own needs. And that's what you got to do. All right. Thank you, Jamie, so much for joining us today. I've learned a lot, and I hope everyone who's tuned in has as well. If you want to keep learning about how to build a composable commerce framework or architecture at your brand, keep listening to our episodes. We have many more about different pieces of technology, such as PIM and CMS, coming. So stay tuned in, and we look forward to talking with you all soon. Thank you.